right now, well, he moved on. He ended up in Branch County, then he went to Prosecuting Attorneys Association in Michigan. Basically, he trains prosecutors. That's his job. He trains police officers too. He's the DARE drug recognition trainer.
Right. Yep.
He's a certified drug recognition trainer. That means he can, if you're driving under the influence of a controlled substance, he could probably tell whether or not you're under the controlled substance. In many times, he can tell you what the controlled substance actually is.
Sounds great.
Go on forever. Basically, he trains the he trains police officers. He's one of the instructors. He trains in traffic safety, and he's a traffic safety prosecutor. And actually, if we need him, we can actually call him in to actually run a criminal case if he wants to. But this is his valley where he keeps track of the medical marijuana. He's keeping track of the new laws, or proposed laws for recreational marijuana also.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Dave. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here. Thank you. If at any time, it's my understanding you'll take questions at the end, so certainly that's the way I'll do it. I want to make this very clear. I don't take a position one way or the other on this, all right, because I'm not allowed to. I give you what I need to give you. Now, I said that one time in Tuscola County, and there were about 300 people there at the bowling alley, back when we were bowling alley, and I said to the prosecutor, I said, has this been put out to the media? And he goes, yeah, it's been put out to the media. How many people do you expect? It was like 35. I go, well, if the media knows about this. This was back in 2011 or whatever. I go, there'll be like 350 people here. And there were 350 people here. And so when I started out that way, I had about 8 people yell out liar. I continued on, got through it. They were the ones actually coming up afterwards asking me a lot of questions. They just want to make sure they get it right so they're not in violation of the law. So that's where I'm at on this. First of all, anytime I give a presentation, I have to make sure this works. There we go. Anytime I give a presentation, I dedicate it to my son. He just started 6th grade, so he's all excited about starting middle school. So there he is to the left. Your left is bow tie. I'm strongly discouraged against him wearing bow ties, but he likes bow ties, so to say the least. Now this.
I'm trying to keep the mic a little bit because they're recording it.
Yeah, and I'm trying to see if this is working.
It's probably too far away. I don't know. Way closer.
I may have to go over there then. Just with a clicker.
You want me to tell you when to change it?
No, I'll just come over here if it's okay. Yep. All right, a little background as to where we're at right now. Just to keep in mind, there's 30 medical marijuana states, including the District of Columbia. Michigan became the 13th medical marijuana state back in 2008. Keep in mind that 63% voted in favor of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Every county voted in favor of it. The widest gap was a county not too far from here, 2 counties over, that was Washtenaw County. 71% voted in favor of it, 29% against. Since then, other states in the Midwest have joined us. You can see some of the states. You can see Minnesota has joined us, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois. The only 2 states around us that have not become medical marijuana states are Wisconsin and Indiana. Recreational marijuana states. There are now 9 recreational marijuana states, including the District of Columbia. Keep in mind, there are no recreational marijuana states in the Midwest. Michigan may be that first recreational marijuana state in the Midwest because the voters in November will have the opportunity to decide whether we become a recreational marijuana state or not. Keep in mind this, right now where we're at in Michigan, it works like this. Back in 2008, we passed, meaning the voters passed the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. In 2016, the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act came into play. That was passed by the legislature. But the authority that's in charge of that particular act under the state of Michigan, LARA, the Licensing Authority of Regulatory Affairs, had 365 days to put in rules and regulations. So the first license application could not be taken until December 15, 2017, and then LARA decides whether and who gets to be, in essence, a licensee depending on whether the municipality, the city, village, or township approves for a licensee to come to that city, village, or township. And we'll talk about that a little more here today. Here's the marijuana street price right now. How do I know this? I pick up High Times every month. I literally read it from cover to cover. I go to Barnes & Noble. It's the #1 selling magazine in Portage, right outside of Kalamazoo. So they tell me what's going on with marijuana. Unfortunately, some of the articles I read are not so good. Sometimes they lace the marijuana. And when they lace the marijuana, that can be bad. Atom bombs, marijuana laced with heroin. Heroin, we have a serious epidemic here in Michigan, so that's really bad when we see the atom bomb. Caviar is marijuana laced with cocaine. We're starting to see cocaine come back because the economy's doing well, so people can afford the cocaine. This is one that we don't see so much here, but we may see it in Detroit and other places. Juice joint is marijuana cigarettes sprinkled with crack. This one is not really at all in Michigan. If it ever does come to Michigan, you want to take cover, because PCP by far is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. You feel no pain if you take PCP. PCP and marijuana laced with cocaine and then smoke. That's more than like Washington, D.C. that they're seeing that. An ounce ranges from $100 to $400 in the United States. It's a little more expensive in the Midwest. Why is it a little more expensive in the Midwest? Because as you'll see from one of your handouts, and you have really good handouts, I want to make sure you got some good handouts. The one that has on the front page 30 medical marijuana states and D.C., everybody has that? Thank you. If you go to page 4 of the handout. You want me to go back there?
Yeah.
You'll see how many legal medical marijuana patients there are in the United States. Everybody see that? We have the second highest number of patients in the United States. We have approximately 290,000 qualifying patients in our state, as you can see on this particular page. We're only second to California. As you can see with California, they have almost 1 million qualifying patients in that particular state. Even though you hear about Colorado quite a bit in the news, you'll notice that Colorado is really distant from Michigan with respect to the number of qualifying patients. The one that proportionally has more than us would be Maine, as you can see in the far right-hand column, 38.42, and then we are second with 27.6 in terms of the number of patients per 1,000 state residents. Here's one issue, too, that certainly is a concern, and certainly we want to make sure everybody knows this. We want to make sure not only the licensees, but also the population knows that, unfortunately, at times, we're starting to see this where they're lacing the marijuana with fentanyl. Fentanyl is used for cancer patients, especially those with bone cancer. It's not used to lace with marijuana. When my mom had cancer and she had bone cancer, they gave her fentanyl during the end of her life. That's what it's used for. It's very, very potent. It's much more potent than morphine and much more potent than heroin. This is what we're going to start seeing in Michigan here soon, because soon dispensaries will have licenses properly to set up businesses. The first dispensary license was actually issued out of the first 7, and that was in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, there will be a dispensary that is properly licensed. So right down the street from Ann Arbor, soon near the Detroit Metro Airport, you're going to see signs like this. California is both a medical marijuana state and also a recreational marijuana state. You're also going to see this if we become a recreational marijuana state. This is in Nevada. Nevada's a recreational marijuana state as of a couple of years ago, so I get off my airplane, I want to pick up an ounce of recreational marijuana, I can go to Planet 13, and it's readily available for me to get. This is in Colorado. For many reasons, I prefer marijuana over alcohol. Does that make me a bad person? Ironically, it's right over a liquor store. Colorado spells marijuana with a J. We took the H spelling. We're only one of 4 states that spells marijuana with an H. We do not spell it with a J. Our statutes indicate it's spelled with an H. It doesn't really matter if you spell it with a J or an H, because either way is the correct way. This is in Detroit. Obviously, this is not a licensed facility. This is an illegal dispensary in Detroit. What's kind of interesting is on the sidewalk there it says, "Now open, I kill cancer." This is what it's all about. Certainly you're going to see this soon because it's all about the potency and it's all about the strain. You can see in 1995, it was less than 4% with the THC strain. 2013, it's around 13% with the particular potency. But the last 4 years in Colorado, now why do I put the last 4 years in Colorado? Michigan is on the same path as Colorado. Colorado became a medical marijuana state in 2000. 2010, they became a medical marijuana dispensary state. 2013, they allowed for recreational marijuana facilities. We're on the same path. Michigan, 2008, medical marijuana state. 2018, in about 2 to 3 months, all around the state, you're going to see dispensaries legal because they got a license. That's approximately 10 years later. As I mentioned, 2018, we have the opportunity to vote as to whether we will become a recreational marijuana state. If that's the case, that would take effect January 1st, 2019. It's all about the strain. Look in 2012, high time. Tony tells me that. Oh, look at to the far 25.9%. Look at 2014, we're over 28%. And in 2016, we're over 32%. They got us up 2016 at 2016. Right hand up 31%. We'll get here. We'll see what happens with how this is processed, and certainly what the dispensaries decide to sell here legally in our state. Washington State now has more marijuana businesses than McDonald's and Starbucks combined. More of a perspective with Colorado. You can see the number of medical marijuana dispensaries and the number of recreational marijuana dispensaries outnumber both McDonald's and Starbucks combined. One article are left standing, and only one of those medical marijuana dispensaries carry the particular product for this medical marijuana patient. So what's happened in Oregon, what happens is you got the medical marijuana facilities, you got the recreational marijuana facilities, you got the businesses, all vying for one thing, certainly selling their product and certainly making money. This is somewhat fascinating because it didn't take long for these dispensaries to go by the wayside when recreational marijuana became legal in Oregon in 2016. When I say recreational marijuana became legal, I mean the dispensaries became legal. This is certainly some of the side effects. Don't let a candy bar ruin your vacation with edibles. Start low and go slow. Also, one of the things I certainly really espouse upon is some juices and cookies are not meant for kids. Certainly it's the responsibility of the adults to make sure they lock up their edibles or their medibles so that children don't have any reach to it. This is also a sign today's marijuana is not your Woodstock weed. As I mentioned earlier, the THC levels have increased. Marijuana use in youth, I'm going to skip through this because I want to really get to the heart of it, but certainly you can see the marijuana use in youth has gone up in Colorado. Treatment has gone up. Colorado teen emissions have gone up. High school expulsions have gone up. Hospitalizations, Colorado, have gone up. Homelessness in Denver have gone up. 2 Denver deaths tied to recreational marijuana use. Certainly you got to know how to handle this product when you take it. He did not know how to handle it. He had a chocolate chip cookie that was laced with THC, 6 doses, equivalent to 6 doses in that chocolate chip cookie. He consumed 1 bite, took another bite. First bite still didn't kick in. Second bite didn't kick in. Third bite eventually kicked in. He felt it. He started hallucinating, and he jumped off a building. That's a picture of a lady who was shot by her husband after he ate like the Chuckles marijuana candy. Remember Chuckles? When you were a kid, the green, the orange, and red. I really liked the red, but I didn't have a THC laced. He did. He became delirious, shot his wife, and got 25 years in prison. Colorado traffic deaths have gone up too. This is Michigan traffic deaths. This is what I really pride myself on. I really would like to keep this number down, certainly to 0 one day. I'm not going to talk too much about this particular case, but this is some of the consequences. This lady that was going 113 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone at approximately 7:30 in the morning. She had 5 nanograms of THC in her system. A lady's on her way to work. She T-bones that lady who's on her way to work, kills that lady, and now she's standing trial for second-degree murder. We do have in Michigan, before I get into the acts itself, a roadside drug testing pilot program for oral fluid testing, the saliva. It's really the PBT for drugs. The preliminary breath test, for alcohol at the roadside. Michigan's the only state that has a law as to this particular issue dealing with roadside drug testing. It's in 5 counties. It's being experimented right now in 5 counties. This is not one of the counties. 2 counties over is Washtenaw, St. Clair, Kent County, Berrien County, and then Delta County up in the Upper Peninsula. So I'm going to skip that. I do want you to know a couple things about federal law. Keep in mind, I've done hundreds of presentations on this particular issue, including with those individuals who were at a town meeting, many town meetings, where they're representing the dispensaries, they're representing the growers, they're representing the processors, they're representing who am I missing? Dispensaries, processors, growers, and the secure transporters. So I've had many meetings with that, where they give theirs, I give theirs, I know a lot of them, they know me. So certainly federal law is always in the back of their mind. When we talk about federal law, we know it's against federal law, marijuana. It's a 1-year possession misdemeanor or a 5-year felony for manufacturing. We know the DEA did not recommend, before the President Obama got out as president back in 2016, they thought that his DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, was going to recommend to Congress that they reclassify it from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule II drug. They did not make that recommendation that it be reclassified from a Schedule I drug to a Schedule II drug, hence all the confusion, certainly, with this particular issue, because the feds still do not recognize this particular issue, whether it's medical or otherwise, and certainly that's a dilemma. Will they, under the Trump administration? They may not, and I'll show you why here in a second. But nonetheless, a lot of people were surprised that his administration did not recommend it prior to him leaving office. Keep in mind, and I'll stress this again, Congress is the only one that can reclassify a scheduled drug. Schedule I drugs, you cannot get a prescription for a Schedule I drug anywhere in the United States. Marijuana, according to Congress, is still a Schedule I drug. Heroin's a Schedule I drug. Schedule II drugs would be like all the opiate drugs are Schedule II drugs. That's what falls into play with Schedule II drugs. Schedule II, 3, 4, and 5 drugs, you can get a prescription for those particular drugs. This is a big letter. I can't stress how big this letter is. This is an excerpt from this letter from the ATF back in September 2011. Keep in mind, this is also under the Obama administration. This was probably their toughest stance that they took with respect to the issue of marijuana through their ATF. As I mentioned, this is an excerpt. And it says any person who uses or is addicted to marijuana, regardless of whether her state has passed legislation authorizing marijuana use for medicinal purposes, is an unlawful user of or addicted to a controlled substance, they're prohibited by federal law from possessing firearms or ammunition. So Mrs. Wilson, who was a Nevada qualifying patient, challenged this particular letter from the ATF. She says, I want my gun and I want my marijuana at the same time. It's a violation of my Second Amendment right. So Loretta Lynch, who was under the Obama administration, his U.S. attorney basically defended this letter in court, and the court basically agreed with Mrs. Lynch and ruled against Mrs. Wilson. So this letter is still very much good to go. And why do I say that? Well, Mrs. Wilson said, you know what, I will appeal this decision from the United States District Court in Nevada to the Ninth Circuit United States Court of Appeals in San Francisco. Well, the Ninth Circuit United States Court of Appeals in San Francisco also agreed with Mrs. Lynch, or backed Mrs. Lynch, and ruled against Mrs. Wilson. So that's where we're at with respect to the firearm issue. You either have to decide under federal law, not state law, under federal law, do you want your gun or do you want your marijuana? You can't have both. This is really interesting. The Department of Justice, this guy's got other problems right now besides dealing with the marijuana issue. As you know, he's been in the news quite a bit. As the president's not too happy, you see a picture of him, Jeff Sessions, he basically wants him to go. He's most likely going to go after the midterm or sometime early next year, it sounds like, based on what I'm seeing. But he came out with a tough position in January of this year. He basically said that everything that President Obama's U.S. Attorney's Office put into place, basically he took it all and put it into a garbage can. That's what he did. He said all those memos from 2009, 2011, 2013, they all go by the wayside. The Ogden memorandum, another memorandum, this memorandum, whatever. And those memorandums were somewhat deferential from the U.S. Attorney with respect to this whole issue of marijuana. Under the Obama administration, basically what the U.S. Attorney said, Eric Holder, through one of his deputy attorneys, is, guess what? If you comply with your state medical marijuana law, we won't go after you federally, even though you're violating federal law. Well, Sessions said, you know what? I don't like those memorandums. So that's why in his one-page memorandum, he makes it clear that marijuana possession and distribution is against federal law, and it will direct its U.S. attorneys to approach these cases as they do all their cases. I haven't really seen a tough position by the U.S. attorney and his U.S. attorneys in all 50 states really following through with what his letter said in January of 2018. All right, that's my thought on it, and that's just my opinion. Here's one of the reasons why. Donald Trump said he is likely to support ending a blanket federal ban on marijuana. That's what he said on June 8, 2018. He said that he likely will support a congressional effort to end the federal ban on marijuana. Remember, Congress is the only one that can basically reclassify this. So Trump's remarks, look at the second bullet, puts him sharply at odds with Attorney General Sessions on this issue. The bill in question by a bipartisan coalition would allow states to go forward with legalization unencumbered by threats of federal prosecution. Trump is somewhat close with one of the senators from Colorado, Cory Gardner. Cory Gardner basically said, you better have your U.S. attorney back off on this issue or you're not going to get your appointees through the Senate. So he has somewhat backed off, but the last bullet's somewhat interesting. It says it faces tremendous headwinds. A marijuana policy expert says in Washington, referring to the Cory Gardner, and Elizabeth Warner bill that would reclassify it. So let's talk about the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. As I mentioned, there are two acts in Michigan. The first one I'm going to start out with is the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act back from 2008. I've done many presentations on this. I stay on top of this act on a daily basis. I really understand the act. When I first read the act, when it first came out, I really had to take a look at it. At the association I worked, they said, guess what? We don't want to basically do anything about this in terms of trying to interpret the act, really try to understand the act. So here, Ken, you do it, back in 2008. That's when they assigned it to me, and I'm like, first two words out of my mouth were, oh, crap. As I read it, I'm like, oh, God, I got to put this together for prosecutors and police officers and a number of other people I've spoken to. Here's one of the biggest parts of the act. Please never forget this if you want to really understand the act. I don't care if you're a township official. I don't care if you're a city official, a village official, or state official. This language is powerful in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Extremely powerful. Think about what it says. All other acts and parts of acts inconsistent with my act do not apply to the medical use of marijuana as provided by this act. If you have a state law that conflicts with their act, your state law will take a back seat. Your city ordinance, your village ordinance, your township ordinance will take a back seat. And for whatever reason, these townships are not getting it. I mean, I just don't get it. So you have a handout. Here's your handout of just a case that recently came out from the Michigan Court of Appeals. Let's see what the township tried to do here. This is a township out of Kent County. So this is the DeRuyter versus the Township of Byron. And I'm saying to myself, please don't do anything that's inconsistent with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act in terms of trying to prohibit the patients or the primary caregivers getting what they deserve, because that's what the act says. So let's see what this township decided to do. So on page 1, you'll see that the second full paragraph, they adopted a zoning ordinance regulation for land development and use under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. Use of property by a medical marijuana registered caregiver was permitted only as a home occupation. Defendant prohibited registered caregivers from the medical use of marijuana in a commercial property. That's bad. And they lost. I don't need to go on. They lost. Why did they lose? Because their ordinance conflicts with Section 7E of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. I just bring this to your attention because individual townships, cities, and villages constantly challenge that particular provision of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and they lose. I don't know if they need to be hit over the head again and again, but they lose. Here's an example of just where it comes into play. People versus Kuhn. Mr. Kuhn's a medical marijuana patient, just to show you how powerful that language is. Mr. Kuhn's driving down the road. He's stopped by the police. He shows the police the medical marijuana card. The police say, wait a minute, we have a zero-tolerance drug driving law for Schedule I drugs. So therefore, I'm going to arrest you under the zero-tolerance drug driving law in Michigan. Mr. Kuhn says, no, I'm a Michigan medical marijuana patient. Have you read the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act that says you have to show I'm under the influence at the time I'm operating my motor vehicle with THC in my system? So this case went all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court, and Mr. Kuhn wins. And as you can see with the second bullet there, under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, all other acts and parts of the act inconsistent with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act will take a back seat. So here's how it works in Michigan, just so you understand. If you're not a medical marijuana patient in Michigan and you're driving with THC in your system, that's all the police need to arrest that individual, because you're not a medical marijuana patient. That's what our law says, Michigan Compiled Law 257.6258, with respect to Schedule I drugs. Now, if you are a medical marijuana patient, you have to show three elements. You have to show you're driving, meaning the police, that you have THC in your system, the psychoactive ingredient to marijuana, and you're under the influence. Two different standards in our state with the driving issue. That's where we're at because of that case right here, People versus Kuhn. With respect to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, here's what it's all about with the amendments December 20th, 2016. Please know what medical marijuana patients are allowed to have and their primary caregivers. I'm going to start with the qualifying patients. As you can see with the first bullet there, a qualifying registered patient is allowed to possess an amount of marijuana that does not exceed a combined total of 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana. Before December 20th, 2016, that's what it said. But after December 20th, 2016, they added those three words, and marijuana equivalents. By adding those three words, the marijuana-infused products in Michigan now are legal for qualifying patients to possess. And I'll go through that here in a second. The second part of that bullet deals with the plants. As to the plants, a patient can have 12 plants. Those 12 plants have to be kept in an enclosed, locked facility. And if I'm the patient that maintains those plants, I'm the only one that has access to those plants. Nobody else has access to those plants. I don't care if I'm a prosecutor or a defense attorney who represents medical marijuana patients, they will tell you that. They will tell you, don't be a guinea pig. Don't be an example. So when it says 12 plants kept in a closed locked facility that you have to maintain the qualifying patient, that means you maintain those 12 plants. Nobody else has access to those plants. Here's the safe harbor provision of the Act, the last bullet. A qualifying registered patient is protected from arrest, prosecution, or penalty in any manner. The second part of that has been gutted by the courts in our state. Look what it says. You're not to be denied any right or privilege, including but not limited to civil penalty or disciplinary action by a business or occupation or professional licensing board or bureau for the municipal use of, or possession of marijuana. An employer can fire you. They can fire you if you're taking marijuana, regardless of whether you're a medical marijuana patient or not. They can do that. A very important case to read from the Michigan Court of Appeals is called Braska versus Lara. L-A-R-A, Braska is the plaintiff. Braska, B-R-A-S-K-A. In essence, they were fired. That firing was upheld. The issue in that case is whether Mr. Braska and the other plaintiffs could get unemployment compensation. The unemployment law says if you're an individual and you're on a Schedule I drug or taking a Schedule I drug like marijuana, you can't get unemployment compensation. Mr. Braska said, no. Have you read Section 7E of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act? That law conflicts with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, And therefore, Mr. Braska prevailed, and therefore, as long as Mr. Braska can show he's taking medical marijuana while unemployed, he can get unemployment compensation. All right, so that's a big case too. So that's what they're talking about with respect to that part there. Here's the number of individuals that are getting that have debilitating medical conditions. You have to have a debilitating medical condition in order to get a medical marijuana card. You can see 2013, 2014, 2015. The number one debilitating medical condition, as you can see, is severe and chronic pain. Number 2 is severe and persistent muscle spasms. And number 3 is severe nausea. Here's who's getting the cards. You can see under 18, a very small number. You can be under the age of 18 and be on medical marijuana as long as you have 2 doctors sign off. And only the parent or the guardian of that child can maintain the marijuana and the marijuana plants as the primary caregiver. You can see the big groups right there. I just turned a certain age, so I'm outside of that big, tall group, and I've gone into a little group now, but because I just turned a certain age. You can see comparisons with prescriptions right here. There's a little more that you have to do in order to get your prescription, not so much in order to get a medical marijuana card. You pay $100. You have a doctor sign off on that written certification that you have a debilitating medical condition. You send that into the state, and you will get your card. This is also very important for everybody to keep in mind. Please know under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, if you know a patient, just remind them, this is in the law. This is in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and that's something to keep in mind. It requires a qualifying patient or primary caregiver to present both his or her registry identification card and a valid driver's license or government-issued photo ID card in order to be protected from arrest. So that's really important for the patients and primary caregivers to understand. The medical marijuana advocacy groups who were at the table pushed for this. They were in favor of this. They had no issue with this. They thought it was good that this would protect them. This is the most important section of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, by far. To me, this is the most important section, besides that other most important section. There are 2 most important sections. This is the other one. Notice this is the definition of usable marijuana. And this is what I think everybody needs to understand in terms of what the qualifying patient can possess legally in our state. Notice it says the dry leaves, flowers, plant, resin, or extract. See the key word there? Extract of the marijuana plant, but does not include the seeds, stalk, and the roots of the plant. That word extract was added on December 20th, 2016 to allow for marijuana-infused products to be legal in our state. So this is a very important slide right here. So let's see where this slide is at on your handouts. If you go to the one glossy handout that you have in front of you, everybody have the glossy handout. Of course, I don't. Why don't I? It's this one right here. Now, this is a really good handout. You know why this is a really good handout? Because my wife did this handout. If I would have done this handout, it would have sucked. You wouldn't have understood it. This is really important handout. Look at what it does for you. In the far left-hand column, you'll see the different types of marijuana that a patient can possess legally in our state. Look at the first type they could possess legally, usable marijuana. Everybody see that? Then you can see what's included. Plant resin, dried leaves, flowers, the extract of the plant, including shatter, wax, and oil. You can have an amount that does not exceed 2.5 ounces of that stuff. All right? Look at the second part. You see the marijuana-infused products. And you see under marijuana-infused products what that includes. It includes topical formulations like creams, foams, gels, lotions, and ointments. It includes tinctures. That's an alcohol-based liquid. There are 3 extremely popular marijuana-infused products right now. Tinctures is very popular. The patches are very popular. And, of course, gummy bears are always very popular. They love the gummy bears. And then you see the beverages, the edible substances, including the brownies and the gummy bears and similar products. So here's how it works in Michigan with respect to the marijuana-infused products. To determine usable marijuana equivalency, it would specify that 1 ounce of usable marijuana would be considered equivalent to 16 ounces of marijuana-infused product if in solid form. So that means if I have brownies that are THC laced, I can have 40 ounces of that stuff legally. 1 ounce is equivalent, or 16 ounces is equivalent to 1 ounce. Another 16 ounces, I'm up to 2 ounces. 32 ounces, another 8 ounces. That half ounce, I'm up to 40 ounces legally. This is the next one, 7 grams if in gaseous form. Gaseous form, that means you can have 17.5 grams of that if that's all you have legally. It's just the gaseous form. The liquid marijuana right there, you can see 36 fluid ounces of in liquid form. That means I can have 90 ounces of liquid marijuana if that's all I have. 36 plus 36 plus 18 is 90 ounces. And here's the kicker. I, as a patient, can mix and match this stuff as long as I don't exceed 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana and its equivalent. So this is what that means to everybody, certainly. That means I can have 1 ounce of usable or 1 ounce of joints. I can have 16 ounces of THC-laced brownies, and I can have 18 ounces of liquid marijuana. That's 2.5 ounces and its equivalent. I'm in compliance with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act if that's what, in fact, I have. What the kicker is, or what the deal is when individuals don't understand the amounts and they go outside the amounts that they're allowed to have under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, it's important to keep in mind, if you're not within the safe harbor provision of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, you're now outside the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. That's where you can obviously face some difficulty. These are the marijuana strains that High Times have told me that are very popular right now in the last 3 months. These are some of the medibles that the dispensaries soon will be selling. The reason I put that magical butter up there is because Lara's deciding right now through a rule to whether they want delivery services to be in Michigan to deliver the marijuana from the dispensary to the home. So that's also why that's up there. Here's some of the other ones. And then this was in Ann Arbor. This is Fruity Pebbles laced with THC. The bag indicates that it's 99.7% THC potent. This is liquid marijuana up in Negaunee. I don't even know where Negaunee is, but they have liquid marijuana. This is certainly the shatter and the wax. A couple of them that are very popular, the hash oil capsules, and then certainly you see some of the shatter, some of the earwax. Remember, the way I see it is that you can have an amount that doesn't exceed 2.5 ounces of that stuff. That's the way I read it. This is certainly some of the issues that you can face. Dabs safely, cannabis extracts, concentrates, or dabs are extremely strong. Sit down when dabbing, drink water. Call an EMT if you need help. Tinctures are also very popular. You're going to see this sold through the dispensaries. It's interesting how they're, well, that's for another day, but it's also known as green or golden dragon. It's an alcohol-based cannabis extract, essentially infused alcohol, 180 proof or higher. You take about 4 drops of that. You see the little, small little containers, like they're like this big, and you take like 4 drops, you put them in your mouth, you can put them on your body, you can put them pretty much anywhere. You can also put it in juices, ice cream, soups, gelatin, mashed potatoes, and gravy, or salad dressing. High Times recommends Everclear as one of the more popular ones to mix it with. This is an example of a bottle right here. That's $130 on the internet. So if I go to the internet and I put tinctures purchase, I can pick up that bottle right now or have it delivered to my home. This was seized in Benzie County. I don't even know where Benzie County is. That was not a good seizure. They shouldn't have done that because this is less, or this amount is less than 90 ounces. And that was taken off a patient. That is 99, or it says right there on the bottom, 95% pure THC distillate. This is one thing I want to talk about for your community. Please keep in mind that under the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, as it says in the 3rd bullet down, using butane extraction to separate plant resin from a marijuana plant. This is called BHOing. You'll notice 4 down or 3 down. It says inside or within the curtilage of any residential structure. don't do this. Please don't do the BHOing if you don't know what you're doing. Here's the deal. The BHOing is straightforward in terms of what you're doing. So what has happened with certain individuals, they know that the legislature said butane extraction. It doesn't say chemical extraction. All right, there's a big difference. So what I'll do is, to get around the law, I'll use grain alcohol or I'll use rubbing alcohol. Therefore, I'm not prohibited from doing that because the law only says butane extraction. Very interesting, and we've had a couple of issues with that. This is why they do it. It's they're dabbing. Eventually they get that dab or that wax. It's Pot's most powerful high. She's got the final product of what has just happened from the BHOing. And as you can see there with her rig, her oil rig, she is vaping. This is one of the reasons why it's 70 to 90% THC potent. This is how you do it. You see the test tube right there. You take that test tube. What you're going to do is you're going to put that butane in it. You're going to strip it. When you strip it, that's the final product. The problem is it still has the butane in it. This is why we have licensees that know how to do the BHOing correctly with their chemists and their people that work at these particular places. They don't have this in terms of the home. So that still has butane in it, so I got to get rid of the butane. So I put it in a frying pan. I turn the frying pan on. It evaporates in the air, the butane, it gets in the pilot lights, and it blows up your homes. That's what it does. This is what it kind of looks like peanut brittle or Kentucky Fried Chicken. This is what can happen if you don't do it properly. This is Redford Township, major explosion. This explosion was so bad with the 3 individuals in the home, it melted the clothes right off their bodies. 1 person died, the other 2 were seriously injured. This is in Bay City. I hope to God I'm wrong when I say this. I really am. In Calhoun County, which I've been to many, many times, I hope in the next year you do not have a BHO explosion in your county. I hope that's not the case. This is also Muskegon County. We had a 4-year-old in the home. On this side of the house, the young lady, 32 years of age, was BHOing. She didn't do it properly, did about $45,000 worth of damage to her house. She was charged with manufacturing marijuana, a 4-year offense, because that's what the law says, because of what's in the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and she was convicted. Certainly, the vaping is very popular right now. High Times tells me these are the best vape pens in 2015, and therefore we see the more of the vaping going on. With the vaping, certainly that's a concern. If you're really sophisticated with the e-cigarettes, you're not buying the cheap, crappy stuff at Walmart. You're buying that stuff, which is really the good stuff. And certainly that's a concern. One thing to keep in mind, in Michigan, teenagers under the age of 18 can possess e-cigarettes legally because it presumptively contains nicotine. Our state only prohibits tobacco. Well, they don't presumptively contain tobacco. And so what they do is they take the liquid, or they take the cartridge out of there, the nicotine cartridge, and they'll put a THC cartridge in there. Yes, that does happen, with these young kids. So certainly that's a concern. And once again, they're not using the cheap vapes. They're using the more expensive vapes. Let's talk about the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. This is the act that took effect on December 20th, 2016. You can see what's coming to your county depending on what your city, villages, and townships have allowed to come to your county. What's been allowed under this framework is it allows for medical marijuana growers, processors, secure transporters, provisioning centers, and safety compliance facilities to come legally, depending on what the cities, villages, and townships do. And then certainly there's a LARA 5-member board that decides who gets the licenses. Just to apply for a license in our state, with the exception of the Compliance Facility Center, you have to pay $54,000 right off the top just to apply for a license in order to be one of those 4 licensees, not the Compliance Facility Center. Certainly the board, meaning the LARA board, has certain responsibilities, including collecting the money. One thing that's really important for everybody to know in our state is that last bullet. The board may not set rules establishing the limit on the number or type of marijuana facility licenses that may be granted. They can't cap that statewide. That's all put on the cities, villages, and townships, not on the state, in terms of what comes and what doesn't come to our state. And then they set certain rules, which they've already done, including setting the maximum THC levels for marijuana and marijuana-infused products sold or transferred through provisioning centers. This is really important for everybody to know. Please know this, because I don't want you guys to leave here saying, wow, I didn't realize that, now I realize it. So I do want you to leave here knowing that. Look what it says. A tax will be imposed on the retail income of each provisioning center. Only the dispensaries are being taxed, 3%. Now, as what we talked about before we started, the chief and I, taxes will not apply to registered primary caregivers or qualified registered patients, as they are not required to be licensed under the new regulatory scheme. So what's been in place since 2008 stays in place. So if I'm a primary caregiver, I can have up to 5 patients. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 5 patients say, Ken, I want you to maintain my plants. I too can be a primary caregiver and a qualifying patient at the same time. As a qualifying patient, I'll maintain my own plants. Thank you very much. I now have 72 plants and 15 ounces of usable marijuana and its equivalent in my possession. That doesn't change. So this guy, Maurice. No. Maurice and I have been doing business for the last 10 years. Maurice loves me because I give him a high strain, I give him the best THC potency, I give him a really good strain like Bubba Kush. THC potency is really good. He's paying me a fair amount. I'm happy. I don't report that to anybody. He doesn't report that to anybody. The state does not know about this transaction. It's a private transaction. Now, Maurice could say, you know what? Thank you, Ken, for the 2.5 ounces. You know what I'll do? I'll go over to her, the dispensary, and pick up another 2.5 ounces. Nobody knows about that one there. So as far as the state's concerned, he's complying with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Because as far as the state's concerned, he has 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana in his possession because they don't know about this transaction. Certainly that's one of the holes that's in the law, so to speak. That has not been messed with, meaning that is still in place. The traditional the traditional primary caregiver-patient relationship stays in place despite this. This is another avenue for those who can't get this this marijuana to go to the dispensary. That's what we set up, a regulatory framework to allow for that qualifying patient to go to this dispensary and pick up 2.5 ounces of usable marijuana and its equivalent. So here's the deal. How's the money distributed, you asked? Well, here's how it's distributed. And I want you to please pay close attention to this. It says 25% to municipalities. Municipalities are cities, villages, and townships. Where the marijuana facilities are located, allocated in proportion to the number of marijuana facilities within that municipality. The more you have, guess what? The more money you're going to get, more piece of the pie you're going to have. 30% to counties where marijuana facilities are located, allocated in proportion to the number of marijuana facilities within that county. The counties don't have a say in this. They're getting 30% of the money, even though they don't have a say in this. Look at the next one. 5% to counties exclusively to support county sheriffs. 30% to the state. The state always gets their money. Always. You'll see right there until September 30th for deposit in the general fund, and then after October 1st of this year, it goes into this first responder presumed coverage fund. 5% to the MCOs to help train these individuals in understanding the law. 5% to MSP. That's nice. So here's what they expect in the first year. They expect $21 million. That's what they expect. Medical marijuana excess fund distribution. So $21 million, 3%, that $21 million, that's $700 million in revenue, if you think about it. So let's use this as an example. One license allowed by the Albion City Council. Albion City Council says, we want a dispensary. Dispensary statewide bringing approximately $700 million in revenue. Where did I get the $700 million? Because right here, 3% tax paid by the dispensaries of $700 million is approximately that number right there, $21 million. I expect, this is really high, but eventually it's going to get to around 3,000 licenses. Hell, you may have 1,000 licenses in Detroit, let alone the rest of the state, like Flint, Pontiac, Saginaw. Pecani? Where's Pecani? I don't even know, but they want it there in Pecani. So if you look here on your one handout, right here, you'll see the last 3 pages of the handout. This is as of August 17, 2018. It breaks down the county and the municipalities that have said, we want one of these or all of these licensees in our municipality. So let's look at Calhoun County, because that's where we're at. So let's look at Albion. Albion says they want a total of 20 between all license types. That's what they want in Albion. It says in Battle Creek, no cap. No cap, no cap, no cap, no cap. Next one is Bedford Charter Township. Total of 25 between A, B, and C growers. The next one is Emmett Charter Township, no cap, across the board. And then the last one is Marshall. Marshall's kind of interesting, as always. They have no cap on the growers, processors, but no, we don't want dispensaries in Marshall. That's why you see the 0 for the dispensaries. So that's currently where we're at right now in Calhoun County with what the particular municipalities in this county have decided they want. So I have 3,000 licenses up there statewide. I'm going to leave that number. I think it's a conservative number. So here's the deal. 5% the county sheriffs. They expect for the county sheriffs, right there, $1 million. A little over $1 million. $1,067,000. Whatever. So you got to remember there are 83 county sheriffs. So they're dividing that $1 million between them. That means $12,850 per county sheriff. The next one is 5% to MCOs. That means $1 million. That's great. MSP, wow, they're going to pick up $1 million if that's what they get, the $21 million. And then the first responder fund, they're going to get $6.4 million if the forecasting comes true. And then you see 25% to municipalities, $5,335,000. I used the 3,000 licenses. That means for the municipality, for every license they have in that municipality, they'll get $1,778. And then 30% to counties. Well, we know that there's going to be dividing $6 million by 3,000 counties, or 3,000 licenses. That's what they get. Here's the deal. This is in Michigan, or this is in Medical Marijuana Facilities License Act. This is kind of concerning. If you're one of those municipalities, look what it says. Michigan Compiled Law 333.27601 reads in pertinent part as follows. If a law authorization or non-medical use of marijuana in this state is enacted, the section does not apply to the effective date. In essence, if recreational marijuana becomes a reality again, whether through initiative or by legislation, medical marijuana 3% will not be taxed. All this money by the wayside goes bye-bye. That may be by the end of the year, because we may be a recreational marijuana state by, guess what, the end of the year. So now the municipalities that have put these municipalities that have put these in municipality, like we've seen in other cities, townships, and villages around the United States, say, oh crap, we're not getting that 3% anymore, but we have 20 medical marijuana dispensaries in our city. So what are we going to do? Well, in order to get the tax money, we have to bring in the recreational marijuana dispensaries, because this is how the money will be broken down. Until 2022, $20 million annually goes to research, efficacy, and treating medical conditions of veterans. 15% with retailers or micro businesses allocated proportionally to the number of establishments, 15% to counties, 35% to school aid fund for education, and 35% for pot to fix potholes. 35% to Michigan. I'm waiting for that slogan, because that's what it says there. 35% to Michigan Transportation Fund for repair and maintenance of roads and bridges. So that's where the money will go. This is once again, in the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. That got in there somehow, but it did. And so this is where it would go if we became a recreational marijuana state. This is also in Colorado and some of the other states, gas and grass. As a patient and caregiver, I can go to the dispensary every day, 365 days a year, and pick up my 2.5 ounces of marijuana and its equivalent, as long as I pay for it. All right? This is what the law enforcement has authority. I get a lot of questions about law enforcement authority. Well, it's right here. It's right in the Act. A marijuana facility and all articles of property in that facility are subject to examination at any time by a local police agency, like right here, or by the Department of State Police. This will be litigated because I have no idea what it means. So to me, it's somewhat vague. So I can see issues and problems with this, certainly. Do I knock on the door at 2 in the morning and say, I'm here? Or do I have to, it doesn't say a marijuana facility and all articles of property in the facility are subject between the hours of 9 and 9. It says at any time by a local police agency or Department of State Police. These are the licensed parties: Class A, B, and C growers, secured transporters, processors, provision centers, and safety compliance facility. Just let me make a couple other points with the recreational marijuana. I want you to go to you have two good memorandums on this. The one memorandum is from the Michigan Municipal League. That's a really good memorandum. One thing to keep in mind under the medical marijuana, under the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, the cities, villages, and townships have to opt in. If we become a recreational marijuana state, the cities, villages, and townships have to opt out. All right, so that's one thing that they mention here. And certainly, even if they decide to opt out, the voters in that city, village, and township can start a petition drive to make sure they come to that city, village, or township. So that's also part of that handout. So here are the licensed parties. They have to certainly get liability insurance. That's a key. The grower, 500, 1,000, or 1,500 plants. They can't be a secured transporter or safety compliance facility center facility if they're growers. All right? And they also can't be a registered primary caregiver or employ an individual who is simultaneously a registered primary caregiver. This is certainly what's coming. You can't do that in the far left-hand corner. You can't do that. With the guns, not good, okay? But certainly you're going to see this. Why are you going to see this? Because this is what we see in the other 4 states that are very popular. This is one plant, if you do it correctly. And these are plants in Muskegon, Benzie, and if you really do it well, that is one plant. If you know how to do it correctly. This is what's going to happen with the plants. The transporters are going to take those plants to the processing plant. Unless we have this situation, which you may have. I can apply for a license to be a grower, a processor, and a dispensary all at the same time. So I grow it on my property, I process it on my property, and I sell it on my property, roadside. That you can get a license for. You're paying $54,000 just for the application fee up top, but or up front. You can do that. All right. So certainly that would take out this individual right here, the secure transporter. Processor. That's where you process the stuff into this. This is an example of what will be sold. Black cherry gummy bear, THC infused, 100 milligrams of THC per bear, 10 milligrams per serving. The foot's one serving. And the secured transporters, you will see a monopoly in this area. About 10 to 15 companies will monopolize this area, in my opinion. That's what I expect. They have a lot of power. They have the money and the marijuana at the same time. As you can see with the second bullet, each vehicle must be operated with a 2-person crew with at least one individual remaining with the vehicle at all times during the transportation of the vehicle. Then the last red bullet. They may not bear markings or other indications that it's carrying marijuana and marijuana-infused products, and he can search it at any time. Administrative searches. Here's the deal, though. As you know, under federal law, they can't possess what? Yeah, they can't. Who said that? That was good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So what they do in some of the other states, they have an unmarked car follow them with the guns, and usually it's individuals that have a second job, police officer that wants a second job, or retired police officers making extra money. So that's just one example of where there will be issues. You got to remember these semi trucks are going to be lining up at the growing facility, taking all of this away. All right, so they got to protect their asset, their product. This is also an issue, the money. Certainly there's going to be a lot of money involved. Or if you're creative, you'll do this. The money obviously will be in the provisioning centers, or the secured transporters will be transporting it. Certainly the provisioning centers where the consumer can go to pick up the product. A physician can't be allowed there on the premises to issue written certifications. Also, you can't sell, consume, or use alcohol or tobacco products on the premises. So you could go, because of this rule right here, Rule 41, you could go every day and pick up an amount that does not exceed 2.5 ounces per day. And then certainly there will be certain threshold limits on the THC concentrates depending on the product you pick up. This is what soon you will see. You'll see bud tenders. And the money. It's all about the money. In terms of how much money you can make. It's amazing. This is in a dispensary in Colorado. Keep in mind, banks that are federally insured cannot take the money. That's the bottom line. I don't care if you want to sit here and squabble with it all day or argue with it. They just can't. The state's thinking of starting a state-run bank just for the marijuana money. That'll be interesting. As you can see, I will never see that amount of money in my next 25 lifetimes. Here's the deal. So who protects that money, you ask? Well, once again, they hire people and that set up security companies like this, how to keep your dispensary safe and prevent money loss. One way that the money is laundered is through casinos. You have a casino in your county. The guy that runs it, I used to work with. He's a great guy. He's a former police officer, wonderful guy. Certainly, they want to make sure the money's not laundered through the casino. So I go into a casino, I go in with $50,000 in cash, play some blackjack, play a couple hands of 3-card whatever, and then I cash out. I've just laundered the money. All right, so they got to get that money somewhere, somehow. All right, they want it out of the dispensary. Safety compliance facility centers, they're the ones that basically, see, your issue's not with the state. Your issue's with the feds in terms of the money and the guns. Because the feds have made it clear on those two particular issues, more so than any other issue out there. They know that we still have that control under federal law with respect to the banks. PNC, we had the Medical Marijuana Policy Group in Washington, D.C. that basically puts a lot of this legislation together throughout the United States. PNC told them, get rid of your $8 million in our banks. Get it out earlier this year. And they did. Some banks, if they want to take that risk, then go for it. Take the risk and take the money. The safety compliance facility centers, they're the ones that basically make sure those 4 licensees comply with the rules and regulations as set forth by the state of Michigan. Financial responsibility, you need some money in order to be one of those licensees. Co-location, talked about. Class C license to be stacked. If you're a grower, as we saw up in Pecan, 7 of those, 4 of those were for grower licenses, 1,500 plants. That grower got those 4 licenses. He now grows 6,000 plants somewhere up in the middle of Pecan, wherever that is. So you can stack those. So if you're the first one in line, and you say, guess what? We have 10 licenses to grow, to be Class C growers, and I'm the first one in line, and I have a lot of money, I will take on licenses. Thank you very much. The person our first served Class C license. That's the only license that can be stacked. The other ones cannot be stacked. Municipalities have all the power. All the power. If they do nothing, nothing happens. If they decide the number, you can list off, they can decide some number. I'll be invited a certain number. You want this number. They can also pass ordinances relating to marijuana facilities within the section, but I'll tell you right now, they passed the Medical Marijuana Act, that regulation will go back. Right? Be careful of the Farm Act. If you tell a grower he has to grow over here, and the grower says, no, that dirt is awful, I want to grow over here in your city, village, or township, and I am, because if I don't, I will take you to court because my rights are, because your ordinance comes with the right to Farm Act, and your ordinance takes a back. So those examples as to where I see some issues coming up. The location of license, because we passed that out last pages. You want to get that particular where these are throughout the every 2 weeks. Right? Los Angeles County, just to tell you some of the bigger cities where the problems may lie. 2007, the city of Los Angeles capped the number of licensed dispensaries at 187. Thousands of unregulated dispensaries still operate. Because of conflict over land use and zoning, they started those delivery services in the Los Angeles County area. This is Seattle. This is Detroit. This is what you're going to start seeing, the advertising. And the Marijuana Tracking Act, that's for him, this individual right here. They can track from seed to sale through the tracking system where that particular product's going. It's a 24/7 tracking system. Also, the licensees will access this 24/7 tracking system. Verify register identification cards, so their cashier or the individual behind the counter can verify the register identification card. They can track the marijuana transfer and transportation by leases, including transferring, date, quantity, price, and also whether they're getting the amount that they're allowed to have. So this is the system that's in play in Michigan. And had returns from the Marijuana Act. I still have some of those. And this is a quote from Judge O'Connell, basically saying that's fine that our state has passed the medical marijuana facilities, or our state legislature passed the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act. We passed the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. Just have guidelines in place dealing with certain issues so we don't have certain unintended consequences in the future. Are there any questions?
Can you go back to that address?
Sure. You can take your phone, that'd be great. Yes, absolutely.
You mentioned in product amounts, you talked about a gas.
Can you start over one more time?
You talk having certain of THC, weed, whatever, 2.5 ounces.
Right.
You mentioned the gaseous.
Yeah.
What's that?
Don't, and I did the
Okay.
it's like a blue marijuana gas and you're around with it. Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it.
Okay.
I've never. Yeah, it could be the vapes, but I don't know how you measure. Do you like grab it and put it in? You know, because the cartridge itself in the vape is liquid.
Well, they can take it from a liquid and put it into a gas form of vapor, and they fill up these big clear bags.
If you can grab onto that, all the more power and weigh it.
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
Yeah, I mean, good luck. I wish you the best. Yeah. Any other? Please, now's the time to ask if you have questions. Yes, Maurice. Thank you.
Parents of people under 18 that have to have a license, does the parent have to have a license issued to them? To be
They have to have a primary caregiver's license, yes.
And also the child.
They have a primary caregiver's license, yes. Not roughly 500, probably 200 individuals. Yeah, it's a big number. It depends on I mean, I guess you look at the strains, like the West strain. I mean, that's like 22 to 23% CBD and about 2 to 3% THC. And that's why Sanjay Gupta is so big on that for the epileptic seizures. He loves that strain, and he's been on CNN all about it. The problem is at 70, 80, 90% THC potency. That's where the problem is. You know, we can have problems. I mean, you use medical use. I guess that's up to decide. That's not me to decide. You know.
So
Really, no, not that much. No, they're really not at this point in time. Got to remember, the state has an interest in this. I say that objectively. Yes? Yeah.
I was wondering, why can't marijuana be regulated like any other pharmaceutical?
It can, if the feds decide they want to do that. And I'll tell you right now, who's waiting in the background, two major companies, Monsanto and Bayer. They're waiting, they're chomping at the bit. They're hoping every day that they reclassify it. Look up Monsanto, just put it in your phone, Monsanto and THC. Oh my gosh, your Google will go nuts.
I think that was just one of the surprises.
That's one of the, if you asked me that, I would say that's an interesting position, yeah. Because if they reclassify it to a Schedule II drug, that means it has to be sold out of a pharmacy. That means all these dispensaries go bye-bye. Yeah, that's a good question. And there are dispensary owners that are waiting in the wings hoping that happens. Why? Because they want to be bought out. Absolutely. Why not?
How many of you guys knew all this information before you came to night raising here? You knew a lot of the stuff that was given to you.
Well, it depends on who you are.
Let me say this. What it says is that this is only the beginning of how complicated it's going to get for the community. You talk about the concerns, this just doesn't begin to say how complicated it's going to get. When these things, especially as we go into November and all of that, it's going to continue, when you say, Ken, it's going to continue to become a bigger process.
Yeah, and I think her position's, it's really going to be fascinating. You've got to remember, Mitch McConnell just introduced a bill to want hemp legalized because of the farmers. You got to remember, I get this asked by my wife, I get this asked by my daughter, I get this asked by her friends. Hey Ken, why isn't the I can't even think of it now. The CBD oil, why is that illegal? Because Lara says, they came out with a policy, but because it contains the THC, the Schedule I, even if it's a minute amount. It's still, so that's why he's got a bill that wants to basically say for hemp, I think that should be fine, because we make a lot of products with hemp. So it'll be fascinating. That Gardner-Warren bill is the one that would reclassify it. Another guy who's a big proponent on it, and I'm not advocating for this, he mentioned a great point. It's really about the regulation. I mean, the one senator, Rand Paul's really big into reclassifying it. And it'll be interesting to see whether they do reclassify it. Therefore, you would have to go through a pharmacy, just like you go to get your Tramadol or your Soma or your Vicodin. Yeah, that's a great point by you. Great.
An outstanding presentation for our city council and the people here in town that were interested before the city council decided to go off and make decisions.
Yeah.
And now we have up to 20 licenses.
And what may be sad is, unfortunately, if we become a recreational marijuana state, then they have to rethink what they're going to do if they want a piece of that money.
What's the tax for,
10% tax on the recreational marijuana. It would go to how I had it broken down, 15% for the roads, 15% for the lotto, whatever, however I had it broken down.
That's why it's a 4% increase on the state tax.
Right, here's the other big issue, 6%, 10%, then 6%, 16%. Now here's the deal. The marijuana, how much did I say? 3% dispensaries. Do you think they want that 6% too? Yeah, they want the 6%. Here's the problem. In the Michigan Constitution, it says you can't tax medicine. That'll be litigated. They're going to say this is medical marijuana, medicine. You can't tax that 6%. Yeah.
I've got a quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm on the Workforce Development Board, so therefore, we know the liabilities of a industry
Sure.
that is hiring these people that
Sure.
are coming in with it,
Right.
and whether it be recreational or medical,
Right.
what do you do with them?
That's going to have to be with their employment attorney. They'll have to address that. You got to always remember, schedule, it's what their policy says. employment policy. And recreational marijuana doesn't change that either. If you go to that recreational marijuana handout that I passed out, that memorandum, and if you go to page 2, it says, hold on here.
Case law says that even if you have a medical marijuana.
No, I'm talking recreational too.
Well, and right now, we're in a three.
So even with recreational, it's not going to help them, even if they're a recreational marijuana. The businesses can still pretty much, for all practical purposes, do what they want.
And right now, we're at 3.9% on.
Right, right.
Where are we going to get all of the people to do the work that we need them to do?
I understand your concern.
All of the other governments, whether it's Marshall, Albion, or whatever, I have yet to see maybe Dayton, where any of them was called on people in the field, in the substance field, to provide a system of health, of consultation, or anything. I don't get out. I don't believe Dr. Correctly related to the truth. From the council standpoint, maybe Chris got the call. I never did. I watched the whole process.
Yep.
I could have interceded any time and said this, but how are you going to see the council process? Okay. Now, I was extending, we got a excellent policy. Yeah, that's and that's not schools and cities, commissions, are the ones that set the policy, not Scott Down. He responds to what you would ask him. Okay? So again, going back to the suggestion, and those people who are running for office to understand, you know, we here tonight because they believe not was there, and we scheduled to be here. I said, working over it, you guys are on it. But the bottom line, he wanted us to be able to have the information that you gave tonight. Thanks to
I don't really care how you vote, because I don't really care. All I'm here is just to let you know what it is. I mean, what you got, and that's all I'm here. I'm just, yeah, I know. Just to give that up. Yeah. I actually say that, Harry, to people that this is not my county. I leave and you guys decide. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is this, again, this is the issue that's going to come back to us in a lot of different ways. And so part of this discussion is not about politics, we talk about lives, health, and a whole bunch of things that don't have to do with politics. Okay? But about health, people's lives, recreational use, it's a different thing than medical use, very controversial. And part of our issue now with two political and not scared about our health.
Yeah. There's things you can do, different type of marijuana. See, there's 3 types of THC there where you can get a prescription for. You know, one's a UK company, for me, and synthetic marijuana. It's not natural. Yeah. Oh yeah, they advertise it all the time. Lyra came out with a policy about 3 months ago saying that, hey, patients are really the only ones that can have it, as long as they comply with the amount that they're allowed to have. All right, so it's a policy that they came out with. You know, so.
Seems like the CBD goes up, THC typically goes down.
Correct. Yeah. CBD maintain as medicine. That's what they maintain as the CBD. I mean, if you just look up at, I mean, seriously, look up the Charlotte Web. You'll see that.
I know the state's working on legislation coming up with Andrea and THC to be certain not during
Right.
like the .08.
Right.
But the last reports we got from the state, two milligrams, 8 milligrams, but it doesn't say THC in that milligram.
Grams of THC.
But
doesn't tell you anything. Because the way it works is if I smoke now, and then I may have 80, 85 nanograms of THC in my system, all right? Half an hour from now, I may have 15 to 60 nanograms. 60 minutes from that last time I smoked, I may have 5 to 6 nanograms. 90 minutes from now, I'll have 2 to 3 nanograms of THC in my system. It dissipates very rapidly through your blood.
I'm just wondering though, when you've got 90% THC and something versus 8%.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, certainly that'll affect your. It's a psychoactive of the brain. It'll affect the brain differently depending on the amount that you have.
Came up there's marijuana in hemp.
Correct. But hemp's still illegal too in our state because it contains a small amount of THC, like 0.3% or whatever it is, 0.3%. Yeah. No, that's all right. No, that's why McConnell's introduced a bill to legalize it because the amount is so minute. It's like 0.3%. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a two-part question.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that the byproducts of marijuana lasted in the system.
That's the TCOH. That's the metabolite. That's the metabolite. The THC is the active ingredient, the Schedule I drug. The metabolite, TCOOH, or 11-carboxy THC, that's in the system for a long, long time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that the 30 days thing?
That's the 30-day thing. The THC goes very quickly through your blood. It's not like alcohol. The more you drink, the more buzzed you get. The THC, as it's in your brain, you're feeling that psychoactive effect. It's just very rapid. Yeah.
The pilot in Rhode Island.
Yeah. Yeah. Live. Yeah.
How work with the half-life of the THC as well as the potency of the strain?
Yeah, the potency doesn't come into play with that. All they're doing is seeing whether they tested positive or not positive for the THC in their blood or saliva or some other drug. Saliva. It's the saliva. They take their saliva.
So if it wasn't smoke?
If it wasn't smoke, if it was smoke, it would digest. It'll still be your saliva. It'll still be there.
And the half-life is, you said how long does it take to?
It depends. I mean, I thought I had a slide on that, but I don't. If you just hold tight, I may have it.
It can depend on whether it's smoking.
Yeah, I thought I had it. Let me see. No. See this guy here. School. Never made and you put that total card, we get 21 nanograms of THC in the system, so he's pretty high. But like you have 5 in fact, the average from Michigan State Police, where it's breaking down, it'll say 5 nanograms of THC and 85 nanograms of TCOH. All we can go on is the THC. We can't prosecute them if they only had TCOH in their system.
Do you think we're going to have a legal limit? Like how many?
You know, it's a great question.
Active
Yeah,
nanograms you can have?
yeah, it's a great question. 5 states currently have limits.
Yep.
Pennsylvania's like 1 nanogram.
I think Colorado's at 5.
Yeah, 5, but it's presumptive. And then Washington's 5 nanograms. I don't know. Right now, as David correctly mentioned, there's a commission in place to decide whether we will have a nanogram threshold. And they'll probably come up with a decision by the end of the year. Canada legalizes it throughout their entire country, recreational marijuana, October 17th. So they have a nanogram threshold, one for administrative sanctions for the license and then one for criminal sanctions. It's fascinating, yes.
It's not all here. Our youth need to hear you.
I understand. I haven't even shown you the dispensary video yet. The dispensary video is pretty wicked. What they sell at the dispensary, it's pretty objective what they sell, but I didn't show that. But I'll make sure he gets it though.
Are you eligible for students and parents?
Yes.
So we wanted to do something like, for example,
I'm doing that in Monroe County in October, so. Yeah.
So, commissioners, that's something that you can work out from the home church. We come up on the high school level, and
I have a whole different PowerPoint for the kids.
sure, that's fine. The idea is that it should be
Sure.
This meeting tonight was live on YouTube as well. We're on YouTube, so it's on the city's YouTube page, and I will share it on the city's public safety Facebook page as well.
It's good to know that. Just kidding.
Our criteria, how many people here are from coalition? Raise your hand if you're a coalition member. For our social use Albion Public Coalition. And then we also have our leadership council members here, be part of the leadership council, raise your hand also. So the responsibility, not there. Responsibility as we walk through that door, as well said from my part, is where do we go from here? And how do we address some of these things? Now, we can't take but currently, if all of you here had not and didn't know that, think of how many more people who are not here that were let out like that day, they don't have any more knowledge than addition than you guys do. So when you ask them why are these things, why they grow and get out of hand, it's because that's part of the problem. The other part of it is the leadership to move forward with whatever else we need to do. It has to be decided in a different arena. So that's my editorial article. And if I had been through any of our meetings before, to know, I would have editorial. At the end, about where do we go from here? This is what brought us here. Okay? It goes back to, I was thinking about our children and our families. Where do we go from here? And whose responsibility is multiple, not just one. Responsibility, not just law enforcement, not just council, but a number of different places. So with that, it's 8 o'clock, we've had our hour and a half. We're looking to have a presentation in October, hopefully it's in college, where we can engage both college students and community people, so hopefully it's coming up on Bob and Dan, they help us some of that, with their knowledge, spreading the word and getting things together for October, sometime in October, not sure when, if it doesn't work, I see Wes is here, great, is here, we got a chamber director here, we got a lot of key people here, but the thing about it is getting more of the word out, and then November comes to the election, and they create a whole different opportunity.
Harry, I'll just show about 3 minutes of the video.
Go ahead.
Just if you guys, I'm serious.
I'm not sure you're doing that. Go ahead.